Well, in a new AI world, it's important that you have brand recognition that's very strong
Mm.
and it has depth and breadth to it. So when someone starts that conversation with ChatGPT, they have a lot of references, they have a credible source that your company is the source of truth.
Welcome to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc., where we feature experts in growth and brand visibility for law firms and architecture, engineering, and construction firms. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Calcote King. I'm your host, and I'm the principal and president of Reputation Inc. We're a public relations and thought leadership marketing agency for B2B professional services firms, including law firms. To learn more, go to rep-inc, that's inc with a K.com. So, if ChatGPT is telling clients which lawyer to hire, where does that leave legal rankings directories like Best Lawyers? Today, we're talking about AI's impact on law firm visibility and how one of the industry's top ranking programs is responding to AI's role. So, I'm welcoming to the show today Phil Greer, the CEO at Best Lawyers. In his 20 years at the company, he's led international expansion strategies that ensure lawyers around the world receive the recognition they deserve through various Best Lawyers offerings. Phil also has a background as a software engineer, which he tapped into to create the company's first content management system to take the company and its products from analog to digital and is using today as we step into the AI future. So thanks so much for joining me.
No, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about AI. It's a fun topic.
Yeah, and interesting. That's very cool that you started out as a software engineer and now into the CEO role. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so it wasn't my aim. The originally I became an engineer, and it was right after the dot-com boom, and programmers didn't have a lot of places to go. So I was actually working at Bridgestone Firestone as an engineer out on one of the plants. And I found this job in the newspaper, and I decided, okay, let me make this change through to going back into a smaller company. And Best Lawyers had been around since 1981, a very analog company calling lawyers, getting mail-in ballots for trying to determine who are the best lawyers. And they produced a book every 2 years. Actually, one of them is right there. Yeah.
Wow, produced a book.
They
Yeah,
produced a
cool.
book. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you found lawyers, how you found quality
Uh-huh.
lawyers through that research process. And I came on board to digitize it, and I thought, oh, I'll do this for a couple of years, and then I'll finally create my own company, like all young software engineers want to do. And I just never left. The founders, Greg and Steve, were just very supportive of growth, and they wanted somebody who can help them take on this company in a different way. And after I built all these systems and the core systems to digitize it, it was clear I can't leave, because now the company is a digital tech company and
Yeah.
research. And so I stayed along for the ride and eventually started running it in 2011. And when I helped sell the company with the last remaining founder, Steve Nafee, in 2018, I became the CEO. So it went from engineer to director of IT to COO and president and then CEO. So yeah, it's been a 20-year run.
That's great. Yeah, and who would have thought that combination of skills would
Yeah.
would work so well? So very cool. Well, let's talk about AI. So, from your perspective, how is AI changing how people find and evaluate lawyers?
So I think AI in general is just changing how everyone finds anything. I got a daughter in college right now, and she doesn't use Google. She uses ChatGPT or Grok or Perplexity, or if she does use Google, she's looking at the Gemini result sets. So I think the concept about how we actually use the internet has changed pretty pretty stark in the last year. It was actually funny this morning. I was on a walk with her, and she called Safari a search engine. I was like, no, Safari is a web browser. You use that to go to websites. She was like, no, you only use that if you're going to Google. so
Oh, wow.
so I think that the way people are finding anything is changing. In regards to lawyers, tools like ChatGPT allow you to say, what's the top IP litigator in New York? And you get some instant recommendations. But that's a start of a conversation. And that's really the whole concept, the nuanced phrasing of, I need to find somebody. How do I do this? Let me learn more. when you're using a Google, or as my daughter calls it, a search engine, web Safari, when you're using that, you're doing these long form queries, and you're getting a ton of websites that you then have to figure out how to aggregate and what to do with it. And that's why SEO practices were so important, because you want to be at the top of that. Well,
Yeah.
in a new AI world, it's important that you have brand recognition that's very strong, and it
Mm.
has depth and breadth to it. So when someone starts that conversation with ChatGPT, they have a lot of references. They have a credible source that your company is the source of truth. And that's a big focus for best lawyers. We've been around for over 40 years, and we can be that source of truth for these LLMs, which is what they're relying on, instead of just opinions. They need to say, how do we get to the answer? How do we help someone find something? How does it all relate? So
Yeah.
it's all changing.
Yeah, yeah, really rapidly. And I'm sure you guys saw this as well about how when AI engines started really hitting the scene, how search and traffic impact was felt. And tell me about your experiences hearing that from law firms and what you saw happening.
So again, something not just even in the legal space. Last year, we noticed a dip. It started happening trapping around Q4, and that's when Google launched their latest version of Gemini. Which now, when you do a Google search and you have the results, you have that little AI overview at the top. That's their Gemini results, and people were starting to look at that to get information, but not necessarily click on the sites further.
Hmm.
So when we saw that happening, we were like, oh, we have to make it. We have to really start to figure out how we're feeding these LLM services. But every industry started having 15% to 50% nosedive in traffic. And we
Mm,
talked to a lot of SEO experts. We talked to AIO experts out in the field, and they were saying, yeah, this is really hurting all industries. So luckily, us being proactive, when we started to see that dip, we said, okay, how do we feed this? The traffic's going somewhere. It's not like overnight people stopped needing lawyers, stopped needing
right.
doctors and dentists. They just started getting the information from a different place. So spotting that risk and seeing what we were running into, we all right, how do we structure our data? How do we get it fed? What is the
Mm,
appropriate way to do it? And honestly, it's been a lot of trial and error, because there's not a roadmap for disruptive change. I think
right.
that's in disruption itself. They didn't come out and say, okay, we are all the LLMs. Here's how we're going to disrupt all industries. Please follow this roadmap, and you'll be okay. So it's been a little bit of a technology wild west to figure out how this new source of data is getting fed. And I don't know, it's pretty exciting for us to help not just our company, but give that coverage and visibility to all these lawyers and law firms who are going, I don't know what happened.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about specifically legal directories and rankings. How do they fit into this new landscapes? Are they becoming more important, less important? What's your take there?
It depends on the credibility and the brand. The
Mm,
strong, credible brand based directories like ours is so much more important. I was talking earlier about the source of truth. All of these LLMs are trying to solve what is the actual source of truth, and we saw this early in last year, and even this year, where everyone's talking about hallucinations. AI just hallucinates. It's a lack of good source of truth that causes a problem. The more sure it is about the value that they're giving to the user when they're trying to predict what the next response is,
mm,
the better the response is. So LLMs have been doubling down on source of truths that are credible. So rankings like best lawyers, extremely important. We are backed by data. It's peer review. We have we're in over 70 countries. We're referenced by other strong brands that care about the legal market and network. And it helps give confidence. So source of truth and confidence is important for these LLMs. So best lawyers is actually seeing a really exciting next chapter with AI as a
yeah.
searching tool.
Well, it sounds like, as a PR person, my whole career, we had long talked about third party validation.
Mhm.
So the power of third party validation in a human being's decision making process. But it sounds like what you're describing is that third party validation means a lot for these LLMs. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because if the goal is to try to predict what the next response is. And it's based off of trained data of how we would logically figure out an answer. You're talking about how do I know the value of a lawyer? Well, peer review, you know that the other experts in the profession, they know the work and the expertise that a lawyer can provide. You can say, okay, they have a good measuring stick on what makes a best lawyer in a given area. So these LLMs are trying to assimilate in a similar way. They want to make sure that they're making logical decisions. So peer review data, extremely important. They want to give that the right answer, the true
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, it's like being able to survey everyone at once,
Yeah,
in an instant. Yeah, amazing. Which is what the legal industry was, really the foundation of it was going to peers and asking them for referrals back when we actually saw each other in person a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
So, let's talk about how Best Lawyers is responding to this new environment. So, how are you making your data accessible to these AI systems?
Yeah, so data governance has always been important. Even back when I started building the first systems, the idea that we were going to stop taking votes over the phone. I mean, you can still call and talk to our researchers and they'll gladly let you vote. It's just stored in a different way now.
Mm.
So data governance was always important. Uh, Making sure that when law firms are giving us private data, whether it's their client lists or if it's votings of other peers, we want them to be honest and feel comfortable with that. So that's always been important. When we talk about data governance with AI, we have an AI policy on how data is supposed to be used and exposed. When it comes to the ranking, that private data that's being sent in, it's still in a private cloud. It's not exposed in any way. We don't want to provide that to the LLMs. It's not information we want exposed. What we want to expose is things that we would already want a potential client to see. Information about lawyers, information about law firms, their practice, content they're writing, trends that they're experiencing in the space, the growth of certain sectors. And with AI, we have the opportunity to package it up in very structured ways.
Mm.
So without getting too technical, in an SEO world, you have schema markups. It's kind of expanding that structured schema markup. So when LLMs are searching your site or scraping your site, they're able to read it more quickly other than just trying to interpret the web page. So we've put a lot of effort
Mm.
into making sure our schema markups are exposing the right amount of data, the questions that we know people would ask when looking at our site, that we're asking in that schema markup so that LLMs can help answer the questions as well. So we still pride ourselves on keeping private data private
Mhm.
and helping expose appropriate data to answer the question, how do I find the best lawyer for a given matter?
Yeah, yeah, that's really, the privacy component is
Yeah.
so key, especially in this industry. So I know you told my producer about something called Smithy AI. So tell
Yeah.
me, tell me what that is.
Yeah, so Smithy AI, it's our proprietary agent. The naming is actually a nod to the founders of the company, Greg Smith and Steve Navy, so Smithy.
Mhm.
And what it does is it allows us to help with lawyers and firms marketing themselves in this new world. And I say this because the first thing we notice when we go back to like all the traffic's changing, people are using these LLMs. What you notice is there's a lot of duplicative content out there. So you start with the lawyer's profile. They're probably copying their profile from their page to the next page to the next page. It's written by their PR team or some version of a template that they created in the past. So, and then they just continue to, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So to make our data stand out, we said, okay, how can we help lawyers and law firms on our site write unique content and we can structure and expose it to the AI systems? So we decided to create Smithy AI. And Smithy AI, at the original goal, was writing these bios with SEO in mind, with AIO in mind, that's artificial intelligence types optimization, and that we have not just information we know about the lawyers and the law firms, because we know a lot about their trends, their practice, all the data we have. So it's trained on that data, but it's also trained on specialized prompts that feed into the SEO components we're talking about and information we can gather from other sources such as their website. So it was a cool way to say, this is complicated. Creating new bios from scratch is hard. We know who you are. So we want to have Smithy AI be able to write in the persona of the person and
Mm.
create what their potential customer would be and to display that information on bestlawyers.com in the profile section. So that was the original goal. And then we kept expanding and we kept expanding. So right now we're trying to work with, or we're not trying to, we're currently extending Smithy AI to be part of the navigation process on Best Lawyers. So
Oh,
step one was helping a lawyer or marketing director rewrite the content, whether it's their bios or actual articles that we're writing. And now the step two is we want to help clients use the system to find those nuances. So you can go to
mm,
ChatGPT and learn about best lawyers. You can go to Google and search and learn about best lawyers. And coming this year, we're going to be able to change the way we search on our website using Smithy AI as well. So it's a promotion process, helping you write new content, promote yourself both on our website, on other on your website, and part of the insights and trends and navigations of how do you figure out the nuanced questions of, is this a best lawyer? So pretty cool. It's our differentiator is all of our data. We can train it on what we know about the industry, and that we started working on this last year. And so I think we're
yeah.
ahead of the curve, and we're really excited about what we can continue to roll out this next year.
Yeah, that is exciting. So let's explore kind of the flip side. Do you do you worry that AI will influence how lawyers actually vote in their peer reviews and sort of undermine the rankings or influence it in a way that would not be effective?
So when it comes to our rankings, you don't get to choose who you vote on. We decide who you vote on first off. We base it off of some algorithms we wrote a long time ago that say we think we know who you know based off your practice, and we have some heuristics based on what you've said in the past about, oh, I don't know this person, I know this person. We encourage lawyers to be honest about the not just the scoring, because it is private information, we don't share it, but also if you don't know someone, market as you don't know, because there's not a lot of value in you seeing a name and then going to research on the side and then come back and say, okay, let me give a score. So you can't game in the sense of choosing who you vote on. And there's not a high value in you going to do research and then give us a response. We don't need that. We want your true and honest opinion. And the third element that keeps our process pretty unique is the lawyers are voting because they're eligible for this list as well. And so they
Hmm.
want the reputation to be of high value.
Hmm.
Now, it doesn't mean that if they see a name, they're not going to look it up. And if you know in the past years you Googled things and now you pull up a ChatGPT, you might. But there's not a value in them giving us data based off of something that exists. What's more valuable is actually knowing what they know in the field, and they want to give us that truthful information because it's their list. The best lawyers are voting on who the best lawyers are going to be, so they want that to
Yeah.
be highly accurate and highly prestigious.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So, well, I'd love to kind of bottom line it for law firms who are, and we're seeing it right now where we're getting more and more questions from our clients about, hey, I just had a new client tell me they found us in Chat GPT. But
Mhm.
if lawyers are really starting to think about AI and law firm marketers, what should they know in terms of the importance of legal rankings in this whole ecosystem?
Participate in the ones that have a high credibility and brand, that's like good methodology, that when you read about it and you test it in the industry that's been around and you go, this feels like a legitimate process, it feels like a real product, and it feels like the brand is strong, you should be investing in that. Your lawyer should be voting, your marketing team should be continuing to provide data, because that data is then, it's not only just creating the rankings, but the non-private data, the data that you want exposed, is going to be aggregated and put together and fed back to these LLMs from a third-party accreditation, credible service. So you want to be participating, but you also want a level of scrutiny about what you're participating with. Brand is important, and so I would say really focusing on which directories make sense, what are we trying to accomplish, and how do we get our message across.
Music to my ears when you say brand is important. I love it. Well, is there any final thought you'd love to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, exactly that. Don't stop investing in your brand. It's extremely important. Your company will live and die by it, and honestly, it's the most important thing that can exist for you in a digital space, is people agreeing that you're providing a quality product that people need. So it's number one. It should be part of your roadmap every year. What are we doing to grow, test, and strengthen our brand.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We have been talking to Phil Greer of Best Lawyers. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate yours as well.
Thanks for listening to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.